Before I wanted to be a rabbi, I wanted to be a nun. I remember distinctly the moment that I first had that thought. I was a senior in high school, Flatbush, yeshiva, curled up one Sunday morning reading the New York Times Magazine, and there was this amazing article about the life of nuns. And the article touched a deep chord. For those of you who don't know anything about my background, let me just explain briefly. I grew up in a very traditional community of Syrian Jews. Women didn't really have much of a role in the religious public life of the community. So for instance, when I was growing up, at least, girls didn't even go to synagogue. And when I did go, only on Yom Kippur and Rosh Hashanah, we sat behind this big, tall glass barrier watching the men and the boys, and we'd only stand up if our brother or father had an aliyah. There was no room for us to participate, and even if we were allowed to participate, none of us had the skills to do so. We were girls. We were not trained to lead prayer or chant Torah. We did not have bat mitzvahs. As one who fell in love with God and the spiritual realm early in my life, this was disappointing, to say the least. And so I thought, reading the articles about nuns, here it is, a spiritual path for me. It's a good thing I didn't mention this to my parents. A spiritual path that, as I knew it, Judaism could not provide me. At that time, I had no idea that women could become rabbis. In any case, I soon forgot about my dreams of becoming a nun, and instead, I threw myself wholeheartedly into rejecting my religion, my ethnicity, my community, my family, and searching for other sources of meaning. And so I went to college, and I ended up studying religion and philosophy. And I fell in love with Judaism all over again. While in college, I discovered that the rabbinate was a possibility for women, and I decided I wanted to be a rabbi. But by the time I graduated from college, I wasn't really ready for that leap. I mean, all I was taught was that I would get married right after high school, and I would never work outside the home, and I couldn't even imagine an independent life for myself. I didn't know how to do that, so I needed a little time. And of course, I went into therapy, and I found a job, and I did all kinds of interesting things, and I kept talking about becoming a rabbi. And one day, my therapist, who wasn't the most subtle person, said to me, "So when do you think you're going to apply?" And I said, "When I'm ready." And she said, "Well, when will you be ready?" And I said, "When I'm perfect." And she said, "You better apply now." So here's what I want to talk to you about tonight: perfection and how it gets in the way of life. How often we wait for some kind of imaginary readiness, some kind of fantasy perfection, before taking a leap into the unknown. Perhaps we keep ourselves safe, protect ourselves with a fantasy that one day we will pursue this or that dream, take this or that risk, follow this or that love, follow some deep yearning one day when we are ready. And as it turns out, lack of readiness and going forward are key to the Passover story. As we all know, the Israelites left without having time for their dough to rise. They left in haste. They surely weren't ready to go. As it says in Dvarim, in Deuteronomy, "For 7 days eat matzot, the bread of poverty, as when you escape from Egypt in such a hurry. Shivat yamim tochal alav matzot, lechem oni, ki b'chipazon yatzata me'eretz Mitzrayim." The Torah is telling us that the Israelites were not in the least ready for freedom. And if you read the Torah, we can see that. As soon as they get out of Egypt, or even before, is everyone okay? Okay. Even before they cross the Sea of Reeds, they want to go back to Egypt. They are terrified, and they complain their way through the wilderness. They create a golden calf and worship it. They don't want to go into the promised land. They don't believe in the divine promise. So they for sure aren't ready. So I think Passover and Exodus provides us a key to understanding what freedom is and what it isn't, and maybe more importantly, how freedom is, how one becomes free. One becomes free imperfectly. One leaves Egypt in a totally and radically imperfect state. So at my Seder, at the first Seder, my friend Anna Levy-Lyons shared this midrash that she wrote about Miriam trying to get people to leave Egypt, which really makes the point. And her lovely daughter Miri, short for Miriam, read it. And in it, the character of Miriam, the sister of Moses, recounts how she's desperately trying to get people to leave. And she writes, I started running from house to house, pounding on doors, yelling like a crazy person that we have to go now. We can't wait. I was literally pulling the covers off of people in their beds. I was helping other people's little kids get dressed. I was feeding other people's animals for the journey. Women gave me patronizing smiles and said, we can't go now. Our dough hasn't even had a chance to rise yet. Later, we'll go later. That was the number one excuse. The dough hadn't had time to rise. And I would shout, it doesn't matter. Just take it the way it is. Our liberation is here. This is going to become the bread of our freedom. This is true for all of us, isn't it? We aren't ready for freedom. You and I, we're radically imperfect. I know I am. I don't know about you, but just because we are human. But it doesn't matter. The Torah is telling us, just go the way you are. Liberation beckons. See, here's another variation on this theme. This weekend, this Shabbat, we read a beautiful, beautiful book in the Torah called Shir HaShirim, Song of Songs. It's a gorgeous love story, or a series of love poems that feature a man and woman who are clearly yearning for each other and praising each other and want to connect. And they're always like not quite connecting. And we read it this Shabbat because the rabbis believe that this book was about the love story between God and the Israelites. And Exodus is also about the love story between God and the people of Israel. So there's a strange mystery in this book that speaks to readiness. But before I tell you what the mystery is, I just want to give you like a little sense of the book. So it starts, "Oh, give me of the kisses of your mouth, for your love is more delightful than wine." How many people here have never read the Song of Songs? So it's definitely worth reading, especially if you can read it with a beloved. Yishakeni minishikot pihu, ki tovim dodecha miyayin.
ישקני מנשיקות פיהו, כי טובים דודיך מיין. ישקני מנשיקות פיהו, כי טובים דודיך מיין.
Then after 4 chapters of this incredible love song of lovers searching and yearning for one another, something incredible and inscrutable happens in chapter 5. Something I've wondered about for years. The male lover shows up at the door of his beloved. She says, I was asleep, ani yeshena, but my heart was awake. V'libi air, kol dodi dofek. Listen, the sound of my lover knocking.
אני ישנה וליבי ער, אני ישנה וליבי ער, כל דודי דופק, כל דודי דופק, כל כל דודי דופק, כל דודי דופק.
The male lover says, "Open, my sister, my friend, my dove, my perfect one. My hair is wet, drenched with the dew of night. Pitchi li achoti yonati tamati, shiroshi nimla tal, kfutzotai resisei laila." So here's the shocker. Instead of answering the door, she says, "But I have taken off my clothes. How can I dress again? I have bathed my feet. Must I dirty them?" Okay, she's got to be kidding. She's been waiting for this guy for 4 long chapters, and now she doesn't want to get her feet dirty? She finally stands up and goes to answer the door. He's gone. Oh no! She's waited too long. What? She wasn't ready for love. She couldn't take the leap. Things weren't perfect. Her feet were too clean. And so she delayed and missed her beloved. The Israelites weren't ready. Their dough hadn't risen, but they raced out of town with dough on their backs. They were willing not to be ready. Listen for a moment to the end of my friend Anna's midrash. Here's Miriam again. She says, "I was the last one out. I raced back to my house and threw a few things in my bag, only the essentials. As I turned for one last look at this little shack that had been my home for my whole life, I remembered that I had forgotten something, my tambourine. My heart was pounding. I went back in, grabbed the tambourine, and ran for freedom." Our tradition has encoded leaving Egypt everywhere. Not only this festival of Passover, it's in our daily prayers, it's in our Shabbat Kiddush, it's in our legal system. Remember, you are a stranger in a strange land. Leaving Egypt is a daily event. It is the practice par excellence of Judaism. Hearing the knock of our beloved on the door of our lives is a daily event. I try to remember that every day, that knowing I'm not ready, it's time to go anyway, each and every day. That's what freedom looks like. Freedom sounds like the knock on our heart's door. Life beckons. Our beloved beckons. Maybe the beloved is divine. Maybe the beloved is human. Maybe it's life itself. Who is knocking on your door? Are you listening for that knock? Are you answering? Are you ready? Ready or not?
Not planned.
Here you come.